So for our piece today, we have 5 meters of our 4-ply Irish wax linen, and I have a button, and then I have a bunch of our little 6mm large hole pearls. So these are a freshwater pearl, and they've got a drill hole that accommodates up to about a 1.5mm cording. Now these are not all perfect. They're all kind of organic. Some of them have like, little bumps and things like that, but that's exactly what I want on this piece because it's a really organic looking piece. And for tools, we're probably going to use a pair of our tweezers, but if you don't have a pair, don't worry about it. It just makes it a little bit easier if you kind of put a knot where you're not supposed to. And then we need a pair of cutters of some kind, and you guys know I never have scissors, so I'm going to use my cutters. So let's get started. So the first thing I want to do is cut my cords a little bit. So I'm going to find the center of this. And I'm going to, so I just marry up the two ends, and I already had this kind of centered because it's a lot of cording, and I'm going to give that a little cut. So now we're going to have 2 long pieces of cording like that. All right, so I'm going to marry up those 4 ends, and I'm going to find the center. So now you have to be really careful with this cording because it does have that wax on it. It will catch on itself, so it's really easy to end up with knots and things like that. I know that you can take, a piece of paper and run it over and get a little bit of the wax off of it, but I just never bother with that. All right, so now I'm going to cut the middle of that. So now we're going to have 4 pieces that are about 1.25 meters long. So now what I'm going to do is kind of push those together and run those through the button. So I'm just going to put that through there. Now this is not going to be a kit. We will just have these as singular items on the website. So I'll make sure to put a link below for all of the things that you could need for this. So you don't need many things, but we have so many different choices of the 4-ply Irish wax linen. So that's why I thought, well, I don't want to make a kit because then you guys can just choose whatever you want and whatever kind of buttons you want. And then we have lots of these little pearls, and they're fairly affordable because we've deemed these as a B grade. So they're not like what I would call perfect quality. So, all right, I'm going to marry these ends up. So there's like 8 ends there. And I just kind of run my fingers down, making sure that everything's kind of going where I want. It is really hard for me to do this on camera because it's such a long piece and I want you to see it. But by doing that, I create knots and things like that. So, I do want to get it down here. There we go. It's just, with all that wax on there, it can make it a little difficult. But I'm trying to get that so that it's sort of centered. Okay, so now you've got this piece on one end and you've got like 8 pieces on here. Okay, so now I'm just going to do an overhand knot. And I'm going to bring all of those through and push that towards the button. Now your hands are going to be a mess after. They're going to have wax all over them, but like just a quick wash and it'll come off really easily. So I find the best thing to do is just kind of use your thumbnail and push that down right where you want it. And if you want, you could grab each particular piece, like grab, they are hard to get apart, and give each one a tug if you wanted to make sure that it was all, nicely put together. Now, if you did have one kind of sticking out, you would definitely want to do that. You would want to take each piece and pull it to make sure that you didn't have anything sticking out, but mine look actually pretty good. Okay, so now what I want to do is separate these. Now, there's no right or wrong to this. Again, this is going to be the most organic bracelet I've ever made, I'm sure, in that I'm not following like any sort of pattern. I'm just kind of letting it fly where it will. But I do kind of want to isolate 2 at a time that kind of look like they're supposed to go together. So I'm just sort of separating these, making sure they're not getting knotted. So now when I did that, it kind of pulled my knot apart. So I'm just kind of making sure my knot's still tight. Okay, so I've got 2 there, and I've got 2 here. And then I want to have them sort of side by each. So yeah, that looks pretty good. So if I get them all kind of separated all the way down, it's much easier to show you. So I've got 2 here, and 2 there, and 2 there. So now on this literally has what I would say 0 pattern, although I am going to follow a little bit of a sort of a guideline. So about here, I'm going to start and I'm just going to do a little overhand knot. Now that's where these tweezers come in handy. You can kind of like pull that knot through. And that way, if you make a mistake, I'm just going to move all these other ones out of the way. If you make a mistake and you, like let's say I was to tighten that up and then I was left with that, I could use my tweezers to help unpick it. So I'm going to put a knot there, and then I'm going to put a purl on. So you can go through one at a time, or what you could do is take these and kind of twirl them together and make like a little needle and go through. And then I'm going to make another knot. So I'm just going to go around my fingers. And the way that I do this second knot is I'm kind of trying to make it almost like a bead cap in a sense, in that I'm pushing it down so that it hugs the outside of that bead and kind of swirls around it. So I just want to make sure when I'm making my knots that I'm not making them super, super tight. I'm keeping that a little bit looser on there. I don't want to have these knots so tight that you're able to pull the bead over top of it. So keep your knots a little bit on the, it's not really loose, but it's not super tight, if that makes any sense at all. All right, so now I'm going to go down about 1/2 inch and I'm going to make another knot. And I'm going to pull that through. So again, you can use your tweezers or whatever you're most comfortable with. And this does not have to be one of those perfect things where you're measuring every 1/2 inch. I just kind of start there and then make my knot and then put on a bead and then make my knot and then try to keep these together when you're making your knots so that you don't end up with anything sticking out where you don't want it to be. And I'm just sort of pushing that towards that hole of my bead, and we're going to have that. So now I'm going to make another knot, and I often will get, slap happy and throw on a bead and then go, oh gosh, I forgot to put on my knot. So make sure you're putting on your knots. So now these don't have to be exactly even, but we do want to have a similar space between them. So again, I'm not using a measurement, but I am trying to eyeball it. And on this particular one, I'm going about 1/2 inch. So I'll just keep doing this all the way down. So I'll show you one more and then I'll just kind of speed it up and finish off this one row. So if you want to get that closer in, you can take your tweezers and just give it a little push like that, and that'll help lock it in. So about 1/2 inch away, I'm going to pull that through, make my knot, and if it happens to get a little bit shorter, don't worry about it. And then put my bead on, and then make another knot. So just kind of push towards, you can kind of spiral it a little bit, and then push towards. And then again, if you want, you can use your tweezers to kind of tighten it up. All right, so I'm going to continue this down for a few more and then I'll be right back. All right, so here's my first strand done, and you can see it's not exactly completely even, but I've got about 1/2 inch space in between them. So now I'm going to pick another strand of 2. So I am going to keep this one and kind of get that out of the way because I'm going to use that for something else later. So I'm going to take this next strand of 2. So I've done that first knot here, about 1/2 inch down. So this one I'm going to do right here. I'm going to start this one up close. And again, this does not have to be perfect. It's just kind of what I did, and I liked how it turned out. So you'll sort of see the finished product when I'm getting it all done there. So that one was up close. And then I'm going to put my bead on. So this is lots of knot tying. So if you're not great at knots, you will be by the time that you finish this, because that's all you're going to be doing is tying knots. So, they're not hard to do. They just take a little finesse. And of course I cut my nails all off and it makes it a little harder. It actually is easier if you have nails. So I'm going to go down another 1/2 inch now that I've started this, and I'll show you why. Now if you need to, just grab your tweezers. Now unfortunately the manufacturer of these tweezers is not making them at the moment, and I only have a couple left. And so I'm hoping to be able to get more. I have to find another source for them. We've been selling these for 13 years and now all of a sudden I can't get them. And it's so frustrating. So I apologize for not having many in stock, and I'm sure at the end of this video, once people start buying things, they'll be sold out. But I will do my best to get more in the coming weeks. Okay, so now you'll see, if I compare it to the first strand that I made, sorry, there's lots of stuff here, so it is hard to see, but you can see it sort of goes in between there. So again, I'm gonna just keep going by the 1/2 inch increments, I have to get that word out right. And you'll find that I'm not editing my videos as much. I'm kind of just leaving them as they are. So if I say a word wrong, I'm just going to correct myself instead of editing it and trying to make everything perfect, because I'm not perfect. Holy smokes, I'm so not perfect. And I think it's actually better if you guys see that I don't always say the right words or say them correctly or whatever. And I definitely don't always make my knots perfect. So it's kind of an opportunity to show you that, you know, I'm not perfect. So I'm going to continue those down. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now it depends on your size of your wrist, and that will be something that you'll have to sort of, you know, look at for measurement. And I will show you at the end how to, you know, kind of figure that out. But I'm going to continue this down for my 8 beads, and then I will be back for the next strand. All right, so I just finished up my second strand. So now you can see that kind of runs in between those beads and they end up just a little bit above. So now on this next strand here, I'm going to try and figure out how to sandwich those. Get this all out of the way so you can see what I'm trying to do here. Keep it on camera and make sure I can show you. Okay, so this one here now, I want to put a knot about there. So I'm going to sort of, you know, try to, it's kind of comparable to here, but I want to have it a little offset. I don't want it exactly across from that. So I'm, you know, and don't worry about it. If it comes out just a little bit different than mine, then that's the way it's supposed to be. I don't know if you've ever looked back at one of my very, very old videos from like 5 years ago where I did the blossom bracelet. It's a very similar sort of style to the blossom bracelet in that it's meant to be where it goes. And with Irish wax linen, it kind of has a mind of its own because of the waxing on it. So don't get all hung up about perfectionism because it will be the joy, or the, what do they call it? It will be like the thief of your joy. And that is such a big thing for me. I really struggle with perfectionism, and this is like the perfect thing for me to do because I can't be so perfect on it. So now I can see that this one is kind of going a bit wonky. See how it's got like one piece out there? So I'm going to try and figure out, oh, it was that one there. So sometimes you can just figure it out by pulling on one. Okay, so now when I put these together, let's see, will that work? You know, and if it doesn't work, then I'm not gonna, yeah, that'll be fine. Okay, so now I'm going to do my 1/2 inch down. So, and you'll see kind of a bit more of what I'm trying to accomplish when I do my next pass. But I do my 1/2 inch and then put on my bead, and I will continue that on for 8 beads, and then I will be back to show you how to finish up the bracelet. All right, so now you can see that I've got my 3 strands of knotted pearls, and I've got 2 strands here that are still just kind of loose. So what I'm going to be doing now is binding this together. And I just kind of thought it looked a little lame, just sort of like that. So I thought, what can I do? So now you can see that there is sort of groupings of 3. There's like a group of 3 there, and a group of 3 here, and a group of 3 there. So that's what we're going to work with. So what I wanted to do is create a little bit more texture in here. So I'm going to be tying a knot around here. So about halfway down, I'm going to do another little knot. And I'm only doing that just for a little bit of texture. It's good. It really doesn't serve a purpose other than to create a little texture along the way. So just create a knot, and it does not matter where it goes. You don't want to have it right next to where we're going to be tying this up, but so it just adds another little bit of texture. So now I'm going to get my little grouping of 3 here. And so I'm going to kind of pull these down to make sure they're where I want them to be. And then I'm going to wrap this around. And this would actually be a really good barrel knot kind of thing, but I didn't want to do barrel knots today. So I just kind of wrap that around, create a loop, and then go down. And then pull that sort of tight. You can see I wrapped it around my finger a bit there just to kind of give it a little bit of guidance. So this is where the tweezers will come in handy. And I'm just going to push against that a little bit. Get it right where I want it before I tighten it up. And then you can take your tweezers or your thumbnail and then just kind of tighten that up. Okay, so now I'm going to make another little knot, about, it's about a halfway down from where you're going to be making your next knot. So, and it's just, again, just for a little bit of texture. And we don't want loose pieces of Irish wax linen hanging out all over the place. All right, so this is my next grouping of 3. So I just kind of take it and go around. And I find if I keep my finger there, it really helps lessen the knots. So that's why I have my finger there. So now I'm going to go through that loop there. Did I get both? No. My fingers are so sticky now because I've made a couple of these. And even though I washed my hands in between, I've been mucking around with Irish wax linen for a while. So they're a little sticky. So you can get a bit cuckoo trying to get this around. I'm going to start again on that one. So see, sometimes even me, when I'm making things, they don't go exactly like I want. Mostly it's because I'm trying to do this on camera. If I could do it in my hands the way that I would, which I wouldn't have it in this direction, but that's just the way I'm trying to do it for on camera. Okay, so I'm going to go around and then I'll come back through this way. So I want to keep it in between those 3. And I'm making this look much more difficult, but basically I'm just creating a knot there. There we go. So if you have one of my barrel knot tubes, you could just do a quick one loop kind of barrel knot thing. So I just want to make sure I'm on the other side of this one here, because I'm going to be doing where there's groups of 3 there. Okay, so again, take your pair of tweezers and pull that. So now you can see that's kind of creating like little nests of pearls, which looks kind of cute. So this is a really good summer kind of bracelet. You could also use a longer length of cording, and you could make this into a really cute anklet. So that would be kind of fun. So this one really went cuckoo, but there we go. I salvaged it. My mat's getting all pulled around. Oh, I'm a mess today. All right, so I'm going to go around. I'm going to keep showing you these ones because this is probably the harder part, is trying to get these organized. So go around where you want to put it, and then I go down, and that helps create a nice knot. And then just make sure it's on the other side of those 3 beads and not the next grouping. So there we go. And it doesn't have to be in any particular place other than on the other 3. And this will all make sense when I show it to you in its entirety. It is very cute. So that one is a perfect example of one where I needed to kind of pull up on it. So now I'm going to create a small one here. Let's see. I always find making these hard when I just do a small loop. So there we go. And just create that little knot part way down for some texture. And then we're going to go around these 3. And then just kind of get those out of the way. There you go. Just, of course, I know I'm making this look ridiculously hard. It is not hard. Let's get those together. So you can see it's just a loop. It's just a little loop there. All right, try that again. I'm not even going to edit that out because, I want you to see that it will be a little messy because it's mostly because of the stickiness of it. But we want the sticky because the sticky is what holds this whole thing together. So, you could use Chinese knotting cord, I suppose. I probably wouldn't use Eslon for something like this. It might be a little too slippery. So, you can always play around. I really did want to use leather, but you can't get 2 passes of leather unless you have like 0.5. and I don't carry that in my store, so I couldn't use the 0.5. All right, now we're just going to make our little texture knot. So this would be cute in leather. Although if you're using 0.5, it might break because you're doing a lot of knots. So, you know, it's one of those things. I never say you can't do something. Just give it a try. If you don't like it, you can always just tear it apart or waste a little bit of leather and try something else, right? That's what I do. That's how this came to be. I had a completely different idea and I didn't like it. So then I started playing around and then I thought I can do something different, completely different, and I kind of liked how it turned out. So that's how this came to be. All right, we're just doing our little texture knot. And from, let's see, how long am I? I'm right 32 minutes. So you can see that in actual time, this does not take a very long time to create. It's not a, you know, something that's going to take you all day to make. All right, create our little loop there. So I find going down is easier because then that's in the right direction. There we go. Hopefully this is working out okay because my mat's all over the place. I don't want it to be crooked on camera. And we're almost done there. So I'm just going to do my little texture knot. I'm going to make that a bigger loop. Go through there. And just kind of put that wherever. So it just creates a little extra knotting down the way. So it doesn't really serve a function other than just for looks. Now I did use 5 meters on this just to see how much we would have left over at the end. I made one with 4 meters and it was a little skimpy when it came to the knots on the end. So it's one of those things that you have to kind of play with. You might be able to get away with 4 meters or 4.5 meters or, you know, whatever. It's just, I always like to work with a little more than a little less. I find it much easier to have a little more to work with, especially when you're knotting. When you're knotting, you will find that if you're trying to scrimp with just a little tiny bit, it makes it just that much more difficult. All right, and then we're going to do our last one here. Now this is where you can sort of personalize it a little bit. So I never say that it's exactly the way, or you should be doing it exactly the way that I did it, because there is no real way that I did this, just kind of finished it off. But tie that tight. Okay, so now you can see we've got this little cluster of pearls and knots, which is just so cute. And it kind of almost looks like leather in this color. And on, it is really adorable. So now this one, I used 8 passes of, or 8 groupings of my pearls. And if I was making it for myself, I would use 9. I've got a larger wrist, so it just depends on the size of your wrist. So where you can make it a little bit longer and embellish it a little bit more is right here. So I've made that one final knot there, but I would make a knot right over top of that. And I want to make sure that I'm careful with this knot, that I'm only pulling through, like I'm actually pulling all of them through there. And this is where I probably would go in and pull each one to tighten it up. And that just takes a second. And that I always keep everything in my fingers so you can't see what I'm doing there. But I find if you're kind of pulling and tightening up with your other fingers here, you'll end up where you want. Oh, there, that pulled that one tight. There was just one that was kind of loose there, and I had to figure out which one it was. And I could see one more there. So, you know what, just like hold on to it. Oh, that's what that one was. There it goes. So I'm just creating a nice little knot over top. Now we're just going to be using this as our clasp. So I'm going to separate 4, and is that 4 and 4, and sort of figure out how big I would make my next knot. And I want it about that big. So I'm going to create another knot. So you'll see why it's so much easier to make knots if you have a little bit more than a little bit less. It just makes it really difficult. So I'm just going to do that. And kind of, I use my thumbnail a lot, and I sort of push against my thumbnail. And I just want to make sure before I tighten that up that I can get this on. If I can't, then I will make it a little bit bigger, but that's about perfect. Okay, so I'm going to tighten that up as best I can. Now you could take, I've got a few extra pearls over here. If you wanted to, we could take a couple of these here and run these through the end. Because we're not doing a kit, because like sometimes people will only need 6 passes of pearls, and other times people need 9 passes of pearls. So I thought, well, if you guys want to make this and you want to buy your own group of pearls or strand of pearls, you can then do whatever you want. So if you have some leftover pearls, you could embellish it like this on the end. So just take a knot like that, and I might even do a double knot just to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. You don't want to have your pearl kind of popping off the end. So that'll make a nice big beefy knot. And so you've got that pearl there. And then you could do another one a little bit longer. So I just think this would be so cute on. It's such a nice organic kind of look. So I'd probably want that one maybe a little longer. So I'll make that knot there. And pull that through and just kind of see where it's going to lay. Yeah, that'll be good there. And I'm just going to double that up so that it'll be nice and juicy, nice big knot. Now, I wouldn't use any glue on this. I would just make my knots nice and tight like that. So now we could just do, 2 like that, or I'm going to continue and do 4. So I'll just find 2 that kind of look like they go together. And my fingers are so sticky. All right, I think I'm going to put a knot right about there. And again, there's no rules on this, so just kind of have some fun with it. So I think this would be so cute as an anklet. Oh, I guess it would help if I put the bead on. Well, you know what? Then I'm just going to make sure that that's the way it's supposed to be then. We're going to do one without a pearl. So sometimes you just have to go with, maybe that's what I'll do, is 2 pearls and 2 knots. How about that? We're flying by the seat of our pants as I'm creating. Yeah, I think that'll be better than having a whole pile of pearls there. I'm going to just do some knots. So this knot can be over here. See, that's the way I meant it to be, right? Oh, goodness. On the other one I made, I didn't even embellish it at all. I just kind of cut it, and it was a bit boring. So by doing this, it's creating a little bit nicer look. I really actually kind of like this with the extras on the bottom. That one started to go where I didn't want it to go, so I'm going to make it go. So there we go. So we've just got a few pearls and some knots, and then you can just kind of trim these however you see fit, and probably having actual scissors would be better than having a pair of cutters, but I don't ever have the right tools for anything, do I? Okay, so let me just clean up for 2 seconds. I'll be right back. All right, so here's our finished piece. So now to put it on, you would just separate those 4 strands and then use that as your buttonhole, and it will get a little bit easier to put on. But look how cute that is. So much fun. So now we do have this 4-ply in many different colors. We have it in black and natural and purples and blues, and I think there's a beautiful rosy pink. We have yellow, orange, all kinds of stuff. So you can really go to town and make this your own. All right, so to make our project today, we're going to be using some 20 gauge titanium wire. I also have a beautiful pendant from Tiara Cast. I also have one of their larger bead caps. I have a bail. I've got this nice juicy piece of check glass, and it's this beautiful sapphire color. And this kit will come in 2 different colors, and I will show you the other colorway at the end. We're also going to be using some large hole these are an agate bead, and these have a particularly large hole, so I'm going to be showing you a little trick with that. We will be using a little bit of this jewelry tube. I have 1.5 meters of 2mm leather. Normally, with the large hole beads, we can only get 1.5mm leather in, but this, like I said, these are really large holes, so I can get up to 2 in there. And for our tools, of course, we're going to be using a barrel knot tube. And yes, I sell those. Everybody asks me all the time, do you sell those? So if you buy this kit, you will get one in there. If you want to buy them separately, you just go to the search bar and type in barrel knot tube. A few things will come up, but you'll see this, and we do sell them on our website. And for our tools, we're going to be using round nose pliers, bent chain nose pliers, regular pliers, and I guess they're called chain nose pliers. You know, like you would think after 20 years I would know what the word is, but all of a sudden I'm old and I'm like, what is that called? So that's a chain nose plier. And see, I told you I'm never editing anymore, so you're going to hear it just like that. And we also have a pair of cutters. So let's get started. You know, it just wouldn't be a Kellie video if I didn't make some goof ups, right? All right, I'm just going to sort of make some room here to get started. All right, I also, not that you need to know this, but I'm using some new glasses today, and they are progressives, and so everything looks kind of round, and I'm struggling, but she said it'll get better, so let's hope. All right, so I'm going to take my leather, and like I said, we have about 1.5 meters, and for those that don't know what a meter is, there's this really cool feature called Google, because that's another question I get all the time is, how much is in a meter? So it's 39.3 inches, but you know, you can also Google that. All right, so I'm going to find the very middle of that. So I just held the two pieces together. It's hard to do this all under camera. And then I just ran my fingers down until I got something that's fairly close to the middle. And I'm going to go offside that middle, like the middle's right there. And I'm going to go offside by like, you know, 1/4 to 1/2 inch. And that's where I'm going to make my first barrel knot. So I'm going to sort of have my finger where I want my first barrel knot to be. So we're going to go around once, twice, 3 times, making nice, neat wraps, taking that same piece that I was wrapping around the tube, and I'm going to go through the tube, through the back, pull that out, and tighten that up. And I know you can't see anything because I've got my fingers there, but you need to keep your fingers on top of your barrel knots or else they will fall apart. Okay. There we go. And now I'm going to take one of our large beads. So I think these are a 10mm. Yeah, I believe these are 10mm white, what do we call these? White lace agate. All right, so I'm going to put that first bead on there, and then I'm going to do another barrel knot. Now you're going to kind of have to angle your tube on the other side of it because you don't want to make your barrel knot way down here. It'll be really hard to push it down. So I try to get it as close to that bead as possible. And then that way we have a little nicer looking wrap, because you know, if you're moving these around, sometimes they will misshape, and if it does, just take it apart gently and make it work. All right, so now you can see I can push it right up towards the bead, and if it's not going the way that I want it to, I just kind of adjust it in my fingers, and you can see I'm going fairly slow, and we've got that. So now I'm remembering that I'm working on the opposite side to the middle, so the longer piece is going to be over here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch that around, and I am going to put my little bail on here because we just want to make sure that we leave room for that bail. Okay, so now I'm going to do another barrel knot on the other side of the bail. So go once, twice, 3 times, and take the end that I was working with and go through the back side of the tube, pull that through. Now, you don't want to have this like jammed in there tightly. You want to sort of have it nestled next to that bail, but I don't want to have it jammed in there. So like I'm not pushing it tight. So I'm pushing the knot tightly, but not next to it tight. Like I want to have it free floating in there a little bit. And now we're going to put on our next bead. This piece comes together really simple and really, really fast. So, all right, so I'm going to put my tube on top there and go 1, 2, 3, and then take that end, go through the back side, Now, for all you people that are doing craft fairs this summer, this would be a really great piece. It's simple. People really like, you know, what I find that they seem to really like simple pieces. So this is just, you know, leather and beads and a little bit of flourish in the front. All right, so now we're going to build the pendant part of it. So I'll just put this up here and move the barrel knot tube out of the way. All right, so now I need about 6 inches or so of the wire, and I'm going to give that a cut. And now I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, the things that I forgot what the name of them was, and I'm going to go to the top, and I'm just going to bend away about, that's about 1.5 inches. So now I am going to go to towards the bottom of my round nose pliers. I don't want to have a little teeny tiny baby loop, and I don't want to have a big gigantic one. So I just want to have it big enough that it's going to go through the loop of the pendant. So up and around and over, and then I just make sure that it's, you know, ending up something like that. Now this heavy gauge wire can be a little bit hard to get into holes and things like that. So I'm just going to take my chain nose pliers and just kind of push that up a little bit. And you can see that that just sort of opened it up. And now when I take our pendant, it will just slip in there easily. I know sometimes I just use my nail, but I don't always find that that's a perfect way of doing it. Sometimes it will misshape your loop. So that's just a little trick you can do. All right, so I'm going to go around once, twice, and then I'm just going through that bulky wrap thing. Now, if it doesn't go the way that you want it to, which mine just didn't, I'm just going to grab hold of the end of that. And that's what these bent chain nose pliers are great for. And then just pull it back into the placement that I want. There. So sometimes you just have to make it go where you want. So this one really got a bad start. You can see it's really going all over the place. So I'm just going to make it do what I want. I'm just going to push that around until I'm happy with the way that it looks. And right there, it's kind of, it just does not want to lay properly. So let's just call it a day. Trim that off. And then now I can kind of refine that and make it look a little bit nicer. Sometimes wire just has a mind of its own, and it will just go in whatever direction it wants. But now you can see that looks perfectly fine. Okay, so next we are going to put on our beautiful piece of check glass. I use these in a lot of my projects because one, we have a lot of them, and I think they're exquisite. And did I say 2? Okay, well now we'll go to 3. They don't make them anymore. So I just think it's a shame to leave them sit in bins, so I'm going to use them. And I think they're just gorgeous. So now I'm going to put on this beautiful scalloped bead cap. Now, I have these large hole beads like I mentioned, and I want to put it on top of here. But I found that it was just like it didn't sit right because you can see like there's lots of room in there. There's lots of play. And I was like, okay, well, I don't have bead aligners. So what am I going to do? Well, we just cleared out all of this. I think we have one tube left or one bunch left. But I thought what we could do is try this. So I'm going to just take a little piece of it. So this is just a 2mm jewelry tube. And if you want more, let me know, and I can always bring it in for you. It may not be this price still because this is a really old one. But I know that you can barrel knot this. So if you're vegan and you wanted to do something other than leather, you can actually, you know, make barrel knots with it. It's great for putting memory wire in. But for today, what we're going to do is we're going to use it as a bead aligner. So, and you will get this in your kit. I'll give you, you know, just under 1 inch, and you would cut it in half. So we're just going to scoot that down. And then now when I put my bead on, it's perfect. It doesn't wibble around because like I made my sample and I just wasn't happy with the way that it was laying on there. It just didn't look right. So now with that little bit of a bead aligner in there, it is perfect. So, you know, I'm always about solving problems. And sometimes with jewelry making, that's exactly what it is. It's problem solving. It's like, okay, well, I want to do this, and how am I going to get that to work? Now, I need to make sure that my loop is going in the right direction for this, the way that this bail is going. So I need this to be going in this direction. So I'm going to bend backwards, and I'm going to make another loop. So now you'll find it's a little bit harder to get that in there, but you just kind of, you know, boss it around, make it do what you want. And up and around and over, and make sure that is sitting nicely on top there. And again, we're going to just open that up ever so slightly. I'm not bending it very much, just a little bit, so that when I go to put it through this loop, it just slips in there nice and easily. And then I just turn it over so that all the pendant part is to the left. And then I'm going to wrap it up. And I want to do a nice bulky wrap. So you might end up with a few more wraps on the top than on the bottom one because you've got a little more space or a neck up here, but you know, it doesn't matter at all when you're making jewelry. Nobody's ever going to say, well, you know what, you've got 2 wraps down there and 3 at the top. So just make it look nice and nobody will notice anything like that. Well, I might, because you know, I'm crazy like that, but most of the time it does not matter. All right, get in there, and I'm just pushing that burr down a little tiny bit. Sometimes when you push it down, it will go it'll go to a bad place, which mine just started to do. So I'm just going to leave well enough alone. All right, so I'm getting rid of the rest of my tools here. So now this is what we've got so far. Look how cute that looks. So I wanted to keep it nice and simple for the top. Now this is my biggest video ever. It has almost 2 million views, and it's on how to tie these sliding knots. But they seem to perplex people all the time. So we're going to keep this really simple. So now the nice thing about a sliding knot is you can then make this however long you want. So you can make it the sliding knot at the very top, and then you can shorten this up so you could have a long necklace or a short necklace. Or you could trim this off and make it so that it's, you know, just a little bit shorter. So you kind of have to experiment a bit with the length on this. And I can't really tell you where you want to put this because everybody's going to want it at a different length. So I will simply show you how to make one, and then you can go from there. Okay, so we're going to take our piece so put it towards you so that you can remember your left and rights here. And so I've just got I'm looking at the front, and I've got 1 piece of leather coming off my left. And I'm just going to bend that back about 3 inches or so. Then I'm going to take my right piece of leather, trying to make this so you can see. And then I'm going to place it underneath that little bent piece. So now it kind of almost looks like we have 3 pieces of leather, but all I've got is that top one bent, and I'm going to place the same amount underneath. Okay, so now it looks like we've got 3. So now I'm going to take this innermost one and start wrapping it around. So I'm going to do that a little tighter so that you can actually see what I'm doing there. Okay. So now I'm just going to wrap it around, and I'm working towards my right hand. So they're a little bit different than my barrel knots. So I want to go 3 times, and this is almost impossible to do under the camera and talking and all those kind of things. So let's get this going here. Okay, I got to go around about 3 times. And you can always pull off a little more leather than I have. And then you're going to go down through this loop here. So I want to get that to go down inside there, and then I grab hold of that, and then I just pull it. So I'm pushing and pulling. I'm pulling this piece, and I'm pushing this piece up. So it might require a couple, back and forth sort of things. There we go. So now you can see that that is how hard that was. That's not hard at all, and that does move around. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is turn the piece over, and if I was to line this up, let's see if I can show you. You can see, I'll try to show you here. This is now where it lines up, so it's offset. So I want to make sure whatever I leave in here is equidistant. So it's a little bit of playing around. So I'm going to pull this a bit because I have to pull it out 3 inches. And again, I always do things like this that are really hard to show under camera. So I'm trying to even this out in my lap so that I can show you. So now you can see that I would want to make my next knot right about here so that that kind of works out right. But that's not going to work. So I'm going to have to pull it up a little bit more and try to get that. Let's see, I'll go back that way. Because you want to have it even, or else it's going to look a little wonky. So I'm just playing with it until I get it to where it sort of evens out a bit here. So I might have to pull that up a bit more. And again, just working until it's sort of even. All right, so that should be about even there. Okay, so I'm going to do exactly like I did on the other side, in that I'm just going to bend it across. So now again, it looks like we've got 3 pieces, but I've just got 1 piece of leather here that I'm bending over top of the existing one. So you're just going to bend it over like that, and then go around once, twice, 3 times. And then I just go down through that leather. I know sometimes it's hard to see with my fingers. I'm doing my very best to try to keep them out of the way. So it's that push and pull thing. And there we go. And you want to make these fairly tight because you don't want them to come undone. And so now you can see that when you pull it together, you have your knots that meet, and then you've got to pull them apart. Now, I get lots of people saying, well, I can't pull them apart. And that's because the leather needs to be broken in a little bit. So what I really suggest when you're doing this is don't pull it so tight that those knots get just slammed up next to each other. Just, you know, it has to get broken in a little bit. And now what you can do is you can trim off the ends, or you can tie them in a little knot or whatever. You do not want to put glue on this because then they won't slide. So you want to make sure that those are super tight before you do any trimming. And then if you want, so you can see, like, here's the beginning of the necklace. We're going all this way, and there's the end. So I made this really, really long. And I just give you a lot of leather so that if you're a plus size person, or if you want to wear this really long, you can. But in reality, you're probably going to remove quite a bit of that. But the other thing that you can do is you can pull this apart. And I'll just kind of make it a little bit smaller. So now, I mean, that's probably too much leather. So I would think that, you know, you can cut off a bit of that. But again, I just want to make sure that you've got enough. But you can see now, if I wear it like this, those knots become like a design feature. They're sort of shown in the front. So now we've got a much smaller necklace. And what you need to make sure when you're making that, the knots, is that this is going to fit over your head. So you can, it's fully adjustable once it's on your neck. So I hope that made sense. You just want to try to even these out the best you can so that they look a little bit like they're equidistant. Now, if you make this and then you think, oh goodness, that is still too long, I'm just not happy with the way that it lays because it's too long, you can just simply undo these knots, and then you can cut off a little bit, trim a bit of the leather, and you can start again. Just don't go too crazy. Okay, so I'm just going to show you both pieces that are completed here. All right, so there you go. There's the completed pieces. This one is the, of course, antique bronze with the sort of a, it's not quite clear, but it has the Picasso finish on it. And then we've got the antique gray leather. And then this is the silver that I was working on, and you will get it with the blue and the antique brown leather. So you'll have 2 different kits to choose from. So to make our piece today, we're going to be starting off with a cute little heart wood button. I also have 3 different colors of check glass rondelles. They're a 6x9 size. And I've got about 23 millimeter fire polish. I also have 2 8/0 seed beads. I have about 2 meters of S-long cording. And for our tools, I'm going to just be using a pair of sharp scissors, a pair of tweezers, and if I can't get my cording through a bead, I've got one of these large eye needles, and that I'll show you how you use that. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is find the 2 ends of my cording, and when we send this to you, we will wrap it up on a little card so that it doesn't get all tangled, because this can get tangled fairly easily. I'm just going to move some of this stuff out of the way. So you want to find your 2 ends and then just pop it through the holes and kind of keep them equal. And then bring that down, and then we're going to tie our first knot. So the way that I tie my knots is I go around 2 fingers, and then I pull the tails up through, and then I take my tweezers, I go down through the loop, and then I place my tweezer noses, I guess, or nose, the end of the tweezers, let's call it that. I put that right where I want my knot to be, and then I sort of straighten it up, and then I pull straight up. So you can see that's about what we want. So we don't want it like crammed right on top, but it is fairly close there. So one of the things you want to do is cut these on a really sharp angle and try to have really good scissors with you, because if your scissors fray the ends, then it makes it just that much more difficult. Now I'm going to be using a couple of these 8/0 seed beads to sort of provide a little bit of an extender. When I was creating this, I found that without this little bit of an extender in there, it was awfully hard to do up. So having these cut on a sharp angle will make all the difference. And you're going to have tons of S-lon, so don't worry about trimming it too often. It doesn't matter. Okay, so we've got our first knot, and then we've got our first 8/0 seed bead. And I'm always asked, what does the aught mean? And it's just, you know, I actually asked Jill Wiseman when I was visiting her, what does that mean? And it really, it's like an old time measurement thing that they used to use. And it essentially means 0. But, and I guess it's just the way that they described beads was by using the aught. So it doesn't really mean anything. That's just what seed beads go by, like 6/0, 8/0. And it's just like you'll see an 8 and then a slash and then a 0. And that 0 represents the aught. So hopefully that answers that question. It doesn't really, you know, mean too much to me. It's just kind of what they've called them, I suppose. All right, now I'm going to put my second one on and make sure that those are still unfrayed on the ends. Now, if you're smart, which, you know, I'm not, because I always just do these things at the very last minute on the weekend when I have time. But what you can do is you can take the very ends of this S-lon the day before you're going to make this, and you can put some glue on it. And like what I would do is just take a little bit of, you know, whatever kind. You can even use Elmer's, just a bit of glue on the very ends. Run it down on either one. So you're going to just run some glue on either end, make it sort of so it's straight and not too much glue because you need it to be fine. And beforehand, cut it on a sharp angle and then let that sit overnight. And that will create a couple needles on the end. So there's all kinds of like little troubleshooting things that you can do to make life easier. All right, so we're going to do our knot, go through the hole, place the tool right where I want that knot, and that's where I want it, and then pull straight up. I don't want to pull it on an angle because then my knot may sit on an angle. So that's what we're doing there to create a little bit of an extender. So now we're going to start with our 6x9 rondelles, and I'm going to show you the pattern, and then I'm going to swap out to the other one to show you how to finish it off. So the pattern is going to be 3 of this one color. So I've got this beautiful seafoam kind of green. And so just wrap that around your finger, pull that through. It's just the same thing over and over and over again, but I want to make sure you see how I do it. Place that right on top. Don't leave a gap or else you'll have a gap. And then I just take my tweezers and kind of run down. And there we've got our knotted piece. So I'm going to repeat that a couple more times here. And always be mindful of those ends, that they're still nice and sharp like that. And I will show you how to use the large hole needle. I don't think we'll include them in the kit because you don't, I really didn't need it when I was making it, but just in case you have problems, they're a really good thing to have because sometimes, you know, some beads just get stuck and you just can't get things through them. And instead of getting, you know, upset and fretting over it, it's best just to have one of these large hole needles. So you would want to use one at a time. So I'll show you now. So what you would do is just take one and run it through the end. And the only reason we're doing one is because otherwise we're going to have 4 pieces going through here. So you would take the end, put it through your bead, and then you just pull through. And then you would repeat with the other one. So it just helps get things through smaller holes. So I use them all the time in projects. They're a really helpful tool. So I will make sure to link those in the description box below. The ones that we have for sale are a little different. This is just one that I grabbed. It's a little bit of a longer style, but they're a really great little thing to have around. So go around your fingers, pull that through, and take the end of your tweezers, place it right where you want that knot, and pull up. Now, everybody has a different way of knotting. If you know how to knot in a different way, then, you know, knot in a different way. It's just, it's not, there's no right or wrong really to it. It's just the way that I do it, and I found that I have the most consistent knots doing it this way. All right, next we're going to use this beautiful, I don't even know what this color was called, but it's, oops, I'm banging things around here. It's a really beautiful, rusty, coppery, kind of cool color. And I thought that was kind of a nice contrast. I like, when I'm creating my jewelry, I'm always thinking about things that are unusual. Something that's maybe a contrast, or, I don't know, just something that brings some interest so that it looks a little different, right? Because I could make this piece with just all the same color, but that might be a bit boring. And then we have this beautiful blue Picasso that is just stunningly gorgeous. I love that. So, see if I can get that through. It might have blunted out a bit because I put it through the needle, but you just cut it on an angle. And it should go through. And if not, to save time on a video, we'll just run that through the end. Now you'll see that when you put it through a bead, don't look at my awful nails today, that it will kind of, you know, it'll sort of tighten up there. But what I do is I just take the end of my tweezers gently, because you can break that. So I just do that and then run it through the bead. There we go. And then just, it's got to make sure it's going through there. A lot of things for me to hold on under the camera, and then just pull and it goes through. So, you know, I would definitely have those around if you're going to be using something like an S-long cording, just to make life easier. So go around, and generally, you know, like I said, I didn't need it at all when I was making my sample, but the odd bead could give you some grief. You can put the end right where you want it, pull up, and if it does what this one's kind of, no, that one didn't do it too bad, but what you can do is you can pull either side of the cording to make sure that your cording is knotting up nicely. So if it kind of separates a little bit, pull one side and then pull the other. So I always like to give you lots of troubleshooting tips when I'm creating, so that if you have problems, you'll know what to do. So around the fingers. I think knotting is one of my favorite techniques. I mean, you know that I do the barrel knots all the time with leather, so I of course love that kind of knotting, but I think tying knots like this is one of my favorite things to do. It's very cathartic, it's rhythmic. I find it easy to do, except when I can't get my S-long to go through, I get frustrated. But, you know, what would jewelry be making if you didn't get frustrated a little bit? But I don't know, I've always loved it. It's the thing I could do over and over and over again. And I could probably do these with my eyes closed because I've done so many. And I've got, you know, a fairly good rhythm that I've created. So now you can see this one has kind of, it's gone up a little bit. It didn't kind of come down. So just pull one side and you can see that popped on right where I wanted it to. So if they separate, just pull one cord instead of both. So this is going to be the end of our pattern. So I'm going to put one of these on in that really fun color that I should have looked up before I started this video. Okay, so that's starting to get a little blunt because we've been, you know, we've gone through quite a few beads already. So just trim away, and then it should make it a bit easier to get through there. There we go. So sharp scissors, that's the key. And then go around my fingers. Pull that through. And find where you want it, and then pull straight up. Make sure you give it a good tug, and then pull down. There we go. So that's our pattern. It's going to be 3 of these sort of seafoam with Picasso, then one of these beautiful sort of coppery kind of ones, and then we've got our 3 blue Picasso, and then another coppery one, and then you'll repeat. So that is going to be the pattern. So I'm going to swap it out with the one that I made earlier and show you how to finish this off. All right, so there we go. I've swapped it out for the one that I've completed. Now this will give you enough to fit a fairly large wrist. And we're going to add a little bit of an extender to create our clasp, and it's going to give us just a little bit more length. So I'm going to use 9 of these on one side. So they're pretty easy to get on. They have enough of a hole to just get that one strand through. Makes that pretty easy. And we're going to keep a couple extras for the ends because, like I said at the beginning, at least I think I did, that I'm not too sure how I'm going to finish this off. And you know, when you are creating, and if you buy this as a kit, because this will be available in kit form, you can alter the kit. You don't have to make it exactly the way that I made it. So if you like something a little different on the end, then create something different on the end. You know, we just provide you with what you need, and you can kind of run with it. So this is starting to get really frayed. So I'll just give that another little trim. And how many do I have on in there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And I'm going to put 9 on there. I want a little bit of a larger kind of clasp. Okay, so I'm going to do that on one side. So and all I did was end with a knot on the end there. And then now I'm going to put on my other side. And you can really hear my air conditioner, so I apologize if it's causing some distortion with the video. But boy, it gets very hot in my filming room with all these lights on. And I'm not ashamed to admit that I need a little bit of a fan. All right, give that another trim. So we got 3 on there. Hopefully I'm in camera. I did a whole video last week and the entire thing was off frame. I was like, oh my gosh, I need to do this whole thing all over again, which is really frustrating. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 7, 8, 9. So now if you want to make this a little bit smaller, again, it's your piece. You can do whatever you like, but I'm going to put 9 on there. So I'm just going to make sure that they're even, and then I'm going to create a knot and push that through with my fingers. And then I'm going to take my tweezers, go through the hole, and then I'm going to place the tweezers right where I want that knot. So you might have to adjust this a little bit to make sure that they're even. And then you're just going to pull up. And that's as much as we need to do. But now what I am going to do is do another knot. I want to kind of make sure that's not going anywhere. And I go down and then I place my tweezers right on top of that first knot. So I'm going to go right about there and just do that. I also like the look of a little beefier knot. You could have done that right here too. I probably would do that, create an extra sort of beefy knot. That creates a nice look. Now we can kind of embellish the end any way that you want. We can take these extra, you'll get 2 extra of the 3 millimeter faceted fire polish, and you can, you know, just put it on the end. You can run it to about here and then create a knot. So you can kind of just do whatever you like. So I would still do the same process. I would make a decision as to where I want it. So I think I want it about there and create a little knot. And then I would do a second knot just because you don't want that bead to pop off the knot. It shouldn't because the hole isn't that large, but I just want to make sure. So I'm going to go right over top of that other knot and then just tighten it up. And sometimes you have to take your tool out. All right, so that's going to just kind of dangle like that. So you could put a knot on either side, or you can just have it free floating. Again, these are completely adaptable. You just kind of, you know, do whatever you like, because I've had people say, oh, I wouldn't finish the end like that. Oh, okay, that's great. You just do whatever makes you happy. So you could do them exactly the same. And I think I'm going to do mine the same. I'm going to try and have them similar, or should I offset? You know what, maybe to make life easy, I'll offset them because then I don't have to worry about them being exactly even. So I'm just going to pop that through, and then I'm going to put that through the hole And then I'm just going to find where I want to put it. Yeah, they're probably going to end up fairly close to each other, but I'm going with whatever it does, because sometimes it's just easier to do that. All right, so I'm going to do one more knot. Now you could take a little bit of GS Hypo glue and put a tiny bit of glue on the end of these knots to make sure that there's no problem with them coming apart. And this one I've got to pull backwards on it a bit because it kind of got away from me. There we go. All right, so they're a little bit offset. And then we're going to just trim that off. Trim that one off a little more. And let me just kind of clean up and then show you what we've got here. Okay, so now we've got this adorable bracelet and we've got that really cute clasp on there. And it creates a little extra length on there too, which is what I wanted. So now, of course, this one fits me. I've got a large wrist. So when you're making your own, you're probably going to have to remove some of these. So you can change up the pattern if you want, or you can just, leave off some of the beads, but you're going to want to measure to see, what's going to fit you. This is going to add about an extra inch on the end by the time you're done. So you want to kind of, do a little bit of math and make sure that that's going to fit. So there you go. There's the piece. I really hope that you like this one. It was super fun to create. And I've made stuff like this before, but nothing that looked exactly like this one. And I thought the color combinations were just beautiful together. And I really liked the kind of a clasp ending here. Just something different. For our piece today, we've got an assortment of parts here. I've got all tiara cast because I love their parts. So I have one of their beautiful charms. I've got one of their, I can never remember if this is like I think it's the Jardin series, but I just love that there's texture on both sides and it's different. We have two of their crimpable cord ends and one of their beautiful round Amour buttons. I have two different sizes of jump rings. So these, this one is the 18 gauge 4mm and this is the 18 gauge 6mm. And I've got two different colors of 6/0 seed beads. And I'll make sure to put a description of everything that I've used. This one is not a kit, but I will put a description of everything that I've used with links to my store so that you know where to find all of the parts for your own piece if you want to make it. I also have about 2 and a bit meters of 1mm leather cording. So I actually used about 2.5 meters because I like to have a little bit more, but you could probably get away with closer to 2. And then I have about 12 inches of 1.5mm leather cording. And for our tools, we're going to be using a barrel knot tube, and we're just going to be using a pair of chain nose pliers and bent chain nose pliers. I'm also going to be using some Loctite super glue. And the other thing that I like to have to make it just a little bit easier is some kind of a clipboard or whatever thing that you like to do for macrame. I like to do macrame in my own hands versus sort of putting it on a board. So I've got lots of different methods on YouTube of how I've done macrame, so you can kind of choose the one that works for you. So let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is get rid of all of this stuff because right now all we need is a pair of cutters. And of course I didn't include those in at the beginning of the video, so I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors here because I actually do have a pair here. Okay, so I need to cut off about 15 inches or so. So I'm going to sort of guesstimate that that's about 15 inches. And then the next piece of cording, I'm going to just marry the two ends up and then cut that in half. And I want, about 30 inches or so on each one of these. Again, I always find macrame easier to do when I have a little more in my hands versus a little less. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to have an outside piece being one of the long ones, and then my inside piece is my shorter one, and then a long one. And what I want to do is kind of just make a little tiny knot on the end. So I don't want to use too much of my material. So I just sort of wrap all three around, and then I'm just going to sort of move it towards the end. Just like that. And the only reason I'm doing that is because I want to place that knot right on the underneath the part of the clip there. That just makes it a little bit easier to have something to hold on to. But again, if you like to do macrame a different way, you can go ahead and do that. So we want to have the center one being our shorter one. So I'm going to put approximately somewhere around 14 to 16 beads on the middle one. So that will be depending how big you need yours. And I will give you measurements at the very end as to what this should fit. I did about 16 on one and 14 on the other. So, you know, this is unfortunately one of those ones that's a little more difficult to size. But like I said, I will get you some actual measurements and we will see where this goes. And I do have a little bit of a troubleshooting thing that we can do at the end should you make it and it's just slightly too long. So, you know, there's always things that you can do to make things fit a little bit better. So what I'm going to be doing is having sort of an accent color on the inside. Now I'm not putting the full amount because I'm going to be swapping this out. I'm just going to kind of get it started. So on this middle one, I just put my whatever color I decide that I want, and then I tie just a little tiny knot on the end. I don't pull it tight because I do want to be able to get that undone later. I just want to make sure that when these are kind of scooshed down here, that they're not going to come off the end. So the way that I get this started is I don't worry about beads, and I just start doing my square knots. So the way that I do that is I'm going to make sort of like a P. You can see that kind of looks like a P. So I'm going over top of that leather, and then I'm bringing this leather over top of that tail, and then it has to go underneath and up through that hole. So I just kind of like grab it and pull it up through that hole there. Now, like I said, I like to do macrame in my hands because I feel like I have more control when I do that, but it's up to you how you like that. Okay, so now the one thing you want to make sure is that you're not pulling on your leather really super tight because it's only 1 millimeter leather and it can break. So we're going to sort of get that into position using a firm sort of pressure, but we're not pulling because you don't want to snap your leather. Now to make the other side of the square knot, you do sort of like a Q. So it's like a backwards P. So you go over top and then under and up through the hole there. And I'm going to do this 3 times. So what I like to do is kind of get it into position, and then I just gently sort of jiggle it back and forth. Again, I'm not pulling. My first one I started this morning, I was reefing on it, and I actually did break my leather. So a good tip is to check your leather before you're cutting it. If you happen to have like a bigger piece of leather, run your fingers down it and make sure that it doesn't have any little nicks or things like that. And if it does, I would cut it off at that point because that's where it will snap if you are doing something like macrame with leather. Leather, it's a natural product, so sometimes there's like a little weakened point. So a full square knot is 1 P. And you can see I just do it again in my hand, make it easy. You can push down that middle one so that you can kind of see what's going on. And then the other side is a Q. So you have to do a P and a Q. If you don't do that, then you will end up with sort of a spiral. Okay. So there we go. We've got 3 on there. So now what I'm going to do is put my secondary color on one side and on my other side. And pull those up towards what I'm working on there. And then I'm going to take one of my red and push that up. So we've got our center color and then our outer color. And now I'm going to do a P. So always make sure, it's hard because the leather has a bit of a roundness to it, so it's hard for me to get this to lay flat. But you always want to make sure that your P is coming over top of that tail that's there and then going underneath. See, I get too many. Actually, I did that wrong. So you always want to make sure, sometimes when I'm filming, my brain's working faster than my hands, or my hands are working faster than my brain. All right, so you want to make sure that you're doing a P. Then you're taking the tail, and that's going over top. Pardon me for doing that backwards. And then I am going to pull that up. And you can see I'm putting my thumb on that middle piece because it does kind of help a little bit for me. All right, so now what I need to do is jockey these all into position. So what it should look like is that. So I don't want to pull that super tight because I don't want this to buckle. I just want to make sure they're all sort of encapsulated with leather there. And then I'm going to do my Q. So just the backwards one. So up through the hole. And then again, sort of not pulling it tight, but I'm, tightening it up a bit. All right, and then I'm going to repeat that multiple times until I run out of beads in the middle. So I'll just show you again. So I put one on each side. And then I bring up one in the center. And then I do my P there. And I just kind of make sure that everything's where I want it to be. And then I find that the opposite side, the Q, is where it really kind of locks in. So just pull that up through. And again, if you know a different way to macrame, then just carry on with the way that you know how. So now you can see it's starting to take shape. So we're always just going to be putting our pattern on one side and then our other color in the middle, and that's never going to change. Of course, it would be your piece, so you could make it however you wanted, but this is what I wanted, to have something stand out, kind of like a spine in the middle. All right. Somebody told me I talked too much in my videos the other day, and I was like, well, how am I not supposed to talk? I don't understand. What am I supposed to just sit here and just do nothing? I don't understand why people say that. So I know that, you guys always say, don't worry about what other people say, but sometimes it gets in your head and then I don't know what to do when I'm filming my videos. So that's why I'm a little bit off. I'm like, well, should I not be talking so much? Anyway, that's just who I am. If you don't like it, just scroll along, I guess, right? Okay, so this is the way we're going to start off. So I am going to swap it out to one that I've already started, which is a completely different color. So this one is using a completely different color. So I've used the antique gray, and then I've used this beautiful saffron, and I can't remember the name of the color on here, but it's, I know it's 6-94506 on our website, and I just think that's a beautiful kind of combination. So I've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 on this one. Okay, so I'm just going to scoot it up here to make sure that you can see the end. So once I've got however many I want, I am going to finish it off the same way that I started. So I started off with 3 and I'm going to end with 3. And this is going to be 1 because that actually counts as 1 there, at least in the design of it. Now this particular leather, I have felt all kinds of little sort of nicks, and like you can see right there, like there's little bends in it that make me very nervous when I'm making macrame. So I've been extremely careful with this particular leather because I want to get to just this very last stitch and not have anything break. So far so good, but not all leathers are as supple as the others. Like sometimes you'll get one and they're just really nice and supple, and then other times they have little nicks or they're a little crunchier. So, and we can't, there's nothing that we can do about that. It's natural product. So it just ends up the way that it is. So if you have something break, I apologize if you buy it from me, because, we have no way to stop things like that. So we've got our little knot that we're going to take out. We've got 3 square knots. We've got our succession of square knots, and then we're ending on 3 there. So all I'm going to do is undo this little knot. Okay, so I've got this much left. So you can see how much we had left over. So you could probably get away with a little bit less. But again, I find it really hard to make knots with just, scrimping. So you know, if you need to be a little more economical, just use maybe 2 meters instead of 2.5 like I did. All right, so what I'm going to do is I am going to get my cord ends, and I'm going to attempt this with a pair of scissors. I did use a pair of cutters because I found it a bit easier. But what I want to do is cut down to about there. Okay, now I'm using Loctite, which isn't the best glue for on camera because it does not get really dry very quickly. So I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to continue with this video. So we'll just kind of, you know, do the best we can. But I might have to pause it for a second. So what I do is I take some of the Loctite and I put a blob on the end, and I make sure that I'm going around to both sides. And it's best to keep, like, you know, a piece of paper or something with you so that, or, you know, something to clean up. So now I'm going to take my end and push it on there. And I want to push it right up against the first square knot there, and I'm just going to hold it for, you know, I was holding them for probably a solid minute. I'm not going to make you watch that on camera, so I'll probably edit this out unless I can kind of, I think it'll stay. That might stay. So let's just kind of hope for the best. All right, so the same on the other end. So I want to have them lined up so that they're all even when I cut. And I want to get about 1/4 of an inch or so. Get rid of these little ends. And you kind of have to like force them together like that to get a bit of glue to get on all of them. Now the good thing about these crimp ends, I got to put enough, say I've got nothing on that end, or that side I should say. So I want to make sure I've got enough. The good thing about these is that they are crimpable. So if you get this on here and you're thinking, oh goodness, I just worry about that so much, I don't want to chance that it could come out, then what I would do is just take my pliers and press down on one side and flip it over and press down on the other. But I don't want that look on this particular one. I want to have something that's a little, I don't know, a little more decorative. And I find when you crimp them down, they get just a little bit kind of smushed. But, you know, either way. So I'm hoping that this is going to hold for the rest of the demo. So on one end, we are going to put our ring. And this is, it does have 2 sides to it, so you can decide whatever way that you want it. Well, let's go with that side. And I'm going to actually put 2 jump rings through here. So the way that you open up a jump ring is you're going to take a bent chain nose on one side and your chain nose on the other, and you're just going to do an opposite movement. And we're going to run that through the end of the cord end, and we're going to put it through this ring. Now the reason that I'm using 2 is I just want a little bit of a bulkier look. Now sometimes when you go to push these back, they don't want to go. So if you kind of go on top and push it, it will lock it in there. These are 18 gauge, so they're a little bit on the heavy side, which is exactly what we want. So you could leave it at just 1. Through there. And there we go. So I find it easier to turn my bent chain nose over the other way when I'm doing these up. And these are hard to get done up, so I just kind of boss them around. Okay, so we have that. And then I am going to pop a charm on here. So I'm going to open this up. So we're using our larger one again. And I'm going to run that through. And these are double-sided charms, so you can decide which way you want to put the charm. Should you use this particular charm? I use these a lot in my samples just because I think they're such a really, you know, a beautiful piece. And I don't know, they're kind of classic. All right, on this end, if you have seen me make jewelry before, you know that I often use 3 jump rings just because I like the way that it extends it out. So I am going to put 3 in here. It's very hot in my workshop right now because it is crazy warm here today. And even with air conditioning on, my hands are sliding off of my tools. Oh goodness, I can't wait for fall. Okay, now the last one, we're going to open that up, run it through the end, and then put it through the button. And I just find that by giving it that extra little bit of length, it makes it much easier to open and close any kind of clasp, but especially with the button, it gives it, you've got a little bit of a neck on there, so it moves around a little bit easier when you've got a little bit extra on there. Okay, now on this end, we are going to take our leather, our 1.5 millimeter piece of leather, and I've only got about 12 inches here, and I'm going to run that through. So I'm going to keep a couple inches on one side and then the longer piece on the top. And then I'm going to take my barrel knot tube and I'm going to wrap close to the ring 3 times and then come in the back end and then pull my tube out. And then now I'm going to, I don't want that tight on the ring, so I just put my thumbnail there and push against that, and then that's exactly where I want it. And now we're going to create another one using the long piece. And I know sort of from experience that I have to make it about that big for my button, but I will show you a little tip. So we'll go around 3 times. And again, you might be able to do this with 10 inches, but I find it hard. So just going to loosely sort of start that. And then I'm going to take my button and place it through and make sure it fits. That's just a little tight, so what I'll do is just kind of pull that back a bit. And there we go, that's perfect. So now that I know that that's where I want it, again, I just put my nail there, and then when I tighten it up, it just pushes against my nail, and that's where it kind of locks in the size. All right, so now I'm going to trim that off. And then I'm also going to take my Loctite. I'm going to do this after the fact. I'm going to put a little dab here. Now you can also see where my nail kind of scraped off a bit of the color. Because these are dyed, it can remove some of the color. And I don't think I have one in my drawer here, but what I would do if this was my piece and I was getting, going to sell it, I would just take a little bit of Sharpie and put that over so that that did not show at all. And it just kind of soaks right into the leather. So I would take just a little dab of glue and put it there, and then one on the opposite side, and then a little dab here, just because this is the part that's going to take the most punishment. All right, so let me grab both of them here and I will show you the end result. All right, so here's the 2 that I have made. This is the very first one that I made, and this has like the chartreuse and then the, I think that's like a yellow Picasso in the middle, and then I used the antique brown cording and the antique pewter findings. And then this is the one that I was working on in the last part of the project with the antique bronze and the Picasso, 2 different colors. And again, I never can remember the actual color names of them, so I will make sure to list everything that I used in both of the colors. So I have this handy dandy little measuring thing here. Now I don't sell these because they're really hard to ship, but I find this really helpful. So this one here, I used 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 of the beads. Now I have a large wrist. I have about a 7.5 to 7 3/4 inch wrist, and this probably would fit me if it had been worn a little bit, if it was sort of stretched out. But let me show you what sort of size that goes to. So with that many, with 16 on there, it goes about 7 1/4 to 7.5, just for, size wise. Now this one we had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So one less, and that takes us to 6 3/4 to 7. That's upside down. I can see that the charm's going the wrong way. So yeah, this one's about maybe 6.5 to 6 3/4. So if you take out one row, just one row at all, you're going to drop yourself down by a whole size of your bracelet. So if you need a really tiny bracelet, you could take out 1 or 2, but I would just take them out by increments of 1. So now if I was going to be making this for a large wrist, instead of 16, I would put at least 17. The other thing that you could do is if you're a little bit nervous about, how do you measure, you could add another row of, your square knots on either end. So if you made it and then you sort of figured out that this wasn't going to fix, I'm just going to grab my ruler here, but I think this little bit here usually is about another, what is that? That adds 2.5 inches. From here to here adds 2.5 inches. So if you made it and you think, oh goodness, it's not going to be quite big enough, you can add an extra 1 or 2 of the square knots on either end, because you do have that little bit of extra leather on the end. And if you had to put a little bit on more on one side than on the other, nobody's ever going to notice. People don't notice those little tiny things. So your first one will probably be an experiment, because that's what generally happens, because it depends on how tight you make your weaves. And so everybody's just going to be a little bit different. So to tell you exact sizing is almost impossible, because there's so many variables depending on how tight you go with your knots. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this one. It was lots of fun to create. I really love how they look. I like that extra little bit in the middle there. It's got that sort of bohemian kind of, you know, interesting look to it that I love so much. Lots of texture. And, you know, you can totally customize this one by changing out buttons and charms and rings and all sorts of things. So all right, so today I am going to be making one of my absolutely most requested bracelets that I've ever had in the history of me having this channel. Whenever I wear the bracelet, I actually forgot to put one on, but when I wear this bracelet on camera, I always get asked, how did you make that? What did you do? And I just have never had the time to sort of sit down and think about how I would do this as a kit. So I'm not going to be doing this as a kit. I'm just going to be doing it as a project. I will make sure to leave a list in the description box that's below this video, and it will have the list of everything that I've used today. It's not very many parts, so it's pretty easy. You can maybe use some of your stash if you've got some extra seed beads kicking around. Anyway, so I'm just going to show you the technique. Now, I do have to preface this with the fact that I am not a crocheter. I just taught myself how to do this. So if you are a crocheter and you're looking at me going, girl, your technique sucks. Well, it's probably because I don't know what I'm doing. I come from a long line of really great crocheters in our family here. Crocheters, that's a hard word to say. Anyway, there's lots of people in my family that are really good at it, but I've never really been taught. So I just kind of made up my own thing. So if you are a master crocheter, or you at least know a little bit about it, then do whatever works for you. But if you've never done any crocheting before, if I can do it, then you can do it. So this is much easier than I'm sure it's going to look. So let's get started on this. So what we're going to need is a pair of sharp scissors of some sort. They don't, you know, we're only going to use them like maybe once. We do need a crochet needle. Now this is a size 5 or a 1.90 millimeter. I don't sell these, but most hobby stores do, like Hobby Lobby or Joann's or any of those kind of places where you can buy knitting needles, that sort of stuff. You might be able to find it on Amazon. I don't usually like to send people there, but these are not hard to find. You just may have to, you know, Michael's I know has them, but you want a small one. You don't want one that has a great big huge hook on the end. So anything in and around that size, I have gone down to, I think, even a 3, but I find this one sort of comfortable to use. Now, speaking of the comfort, I don't find this particularly easy to use because there's not a lot to grip onto, and I've got arthritis. And please excuse my manicure because it looks terrible. Anyway, so you can find some, I think, that have like a bit more of a blocky thing on the end that might make it easier to hold on to. But anyway, so that's what I'm using, is a number 5 or a 1.90 millimeter. I'm also going to be using a thread zapper. You don't have to use that. You can use glue. You could be brave and use a lighter, but we do sell these, and they're sort of one of those things that is just great for what I'm about to do today. I'm also going to be using Eslon. Now, I always get asked the question, is Eslon the same as Ceylon, or is it the same as this? Eslon and Ceylon are exactly the same cording. They're just put out by the same manufacturer, but marketed as a different product, but they're exactly the same. But I think this is the 0.5 tex is what they call it. So I don't, if I'm gonna, I know I'm gonna get a lot of questions saying, well, can I use this and can I use that? I don't know. You'll just have to experiment. We do sell this. We have, I don't know, 60 different colors. So you should be able to find something that works for you. If you want to try something different, then go ahead and try it and see if it works. I wouldn't use Irish wax linen because one, you're going to need an awful lot. And two, I think it'd be too sticky. But if you have other stringy materials in your arsenal, give it a try. You know, I never say that what I do is the only thing that you can do. It's just, this is what I use. So I'm going to be using Eslon. And I'm going to keep like a little, you know, bullnose clip or something like that. I've got some little accent beads, and I'm going to be using some 6/0 seed beads. So these are two different Miyuki seed beads. These are on our website. There are 6-94501, which is the sort of darker color, and the 6-94506. And I love them because they're the Miyuki Picasso beads, and I just love how they look. So the pattern that I did, if you're wanting to, you know, follow along, I used 2 of one, 2 of another, 2 of one, and then I put just a little metal bead, and then I just reversed the pattern. So it just kind of goes 2, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, 2, 1. So, you know, it doesn't have to be anything in particular. It just, you know, that's kind of what I did. I didn't want to have to use a ton of these little faceted beads. But, you know, the one that I wear all the time on my videos has 2 different sizes of these little beads. And we do sell lots of different small beads like this in our $5 bagged findings section. And they're really good value. So, you know, you can use anything. You don't need to put metal beads in there at all. If somebody's allergic to metal and they you don't want to put those in there, don't. If you want to put more metal beads in, put them in. You know, it's really just super, super flexible. So, and that's about all you're going to need. Maybe a little GS Hypo if you don't have a thread zapper, but other than that, we don't need a lot. So what I recommend is to, well, I don't recommend, you need to pre-string on all of your beads. So the first thing we're going to do is you're going to cut yourself, well, you're not going to cut anything. This is a mistake I made today because I was trying to find actual measurements for this to be able to tell you. So I ended up cutting my Eslon, which was silly because then I shortchanged myself on the beads, but you know, I can still teach the demo. Anyway, you're going to just pre-string all of your beads. So you're going to need a total of about 165 beads, somewhere along there. So, you know, you're just going to keep stringing on to your spool. I do recommend buying this by the spool. So I did cut 6 times 6, 360 inches of this. So, you know, if you only have a little bit, it's not going to work. You need a good chunk of your Eslon. So the easiest thing to do is just start putting all your beads on there and just leave it on the spool. And then you don't really need one of these little bull nose clips. But I also use that to help kind of push my beads up a bit. And I'll sort of explain that as I go along. So you want to pre-string all of your beads and leave them on the spool. But I already had another little piece cut here, so I figured I would show you. So I'm just going to sort of pretend that I'm going to make one out of this, and I will show you what I do. So on the opposite end to where the beads are, we're going to just start and make a little slip knot. So again, I know that people that know how to knit and crochet and all that stuff have fancy little ways of creating these, and I don't know how to do that. So all I do is I take my cording and I fold it in half, and I give it a little twist, and I take that and I kind of go over top of the long one. So all I'm doing is creating a slip knot like that. And then I put my needle inside and then tighten it up. So just make any kind of a slip knot. I don't recommend tying it on there because then it doesn't have any, you know, it's not loose, because you want to be able to pull that open and close if you want. So the first thing that you're going to do is pull down a bead. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you how to crochet just in case you don't know how. So I find the best thing with crocheting is to have a little bit of tension. So you want some of this on these fingers, and then I like to hold on to this. Now, as always, the first couple are really tough to do because you don't really have anything to hold on to. But to crochet, all I do is I take my little needle and I bring it around and swoop, and then I pull through that little loop, and there's one. So that's all you're doing is pulling and swooping through like that. So I'll just do a couple so you kind of see what I do here. Now, we don't want these loops tight on the needle. We want, I guess it's a hook. It's not really a needle, it's a hook. But we don't want it tight on there because if you pull that too tight, you're not going to be able to make a nice chain. So one of the things that I've learned along the way, if I want to have an even tension, is I pull my loop back to about here, which will open up that little loop on the thread to about where I want it. I then make the like my little swoop around, and it just kind of ends up the right size. Now, if it falls off, don't worry about it. Just put it back in and then just pull through. So that's the nice thing about crocheting, is it's pretty easy, and this is very forgiving in that it does not have to be perfect. So I would recommend, if you've never done any crocheting, just to kind of play around with it a little bit, find your groove, and just don't have a super tight tension. We want our, you can see all my stitches are pretty close to each other, but they don't have to be exact. And the other nice thing about crocheting is if you don't like what you've done, you just pull back like that. And you can pull back until you have like your first one, and then you can start again. So super simple. You cannot get much more simple. So let's start the project. So the first thing that I would do is I like to use my little bullnose clip and kind of clip back down here, and it helps keep the beads towards the front versus all falling down the back. But if you've got them on a spool, you can do the same sort of thing. It's hard if all your beads are all down on one end. So the first thing I'm going to do is take one bead and I pull it down, and I'm going to just do a stitch around it. So you just kind of ignore that it's there, and you're just going to go around it. And then I'm going to do 2 stitches without anything in it. And then I'm going to pull down another bead. And I'm going to make sure I'm on camera here. And again, you just swoop around and bring that through. Now that counts as sort of 1 stitch. And then you're going to do 2 blank ones. I call them like, blanks is sort of what I used. When I used to teach this in the store, that's what I would always call it, is 2 blanks. So it's like bring down 1 bead and stitch around it. And I'm probably not using the right terminology because, again, I don't know what I'm doing, but I love doing this technique, and it's super easy to teach and it's super easy to do, but I probably don't use the right words. So forgive me if I don't, but anyway, I'm sure you'll get the idea. So we did 1 around the bead, and now if you want, push it down there a little bit, and that will open it up because I could feel it was getting a little bit tight because it went around that bead. Pull 1 and 2 through. There we go. So you can see that this is just very repetitious. I just turned on, what was I watching? I can't even remember what it's called. Anyway, I just turned on a series, and I just watched a couple episodes and created the one that I'm going to switch over to in a second here. So, you can, once you get to know what you're doing, it's pretty simple. So pull your bead down, stitch around it, and then do 1, 2. Really, really simple. And if it doesn't go in there, just what I often do, if it doesn't go through, that means your tension's too tight. So pull back so that it goes, it opens that up, and then pull that through, and you see it'll just pop right in there. So that's all you're going to do until you have completed. So you'll have your bead, first bead, 2 blanks, a bead, 2 blanks, a bead, 2 blanks, and you're just going to have that same pattern all the entire way along until you end up with a really long piece. And I'm just going to show you that. So I created one, but like I said, I made a mistake in that I was trying to measure, and like a silly person, I cut mine off the end. So normally I would have 161 or 165 beads, something like that. I only ended up with 133 here. So we'll see, if it fits and all that sort of stuff, because, oops, I just pulled some of these off of here. Well, I'm just gonna have to remove that. Maybe I can put those on there. I'm not sure. Let me see. All right, so yeah, I can actually do those. I'm just going to pop those on the end. So don't cut your S-Lon off of the spool. That is my lesson of the day, because You know, when I'm trying to do things, I'm thinking of 10 different things at one time, and I really wanted to have an accurate measurement for you. And then I, messed up and didn't realize until I was, about 90% of the way through that that's what I had done. And I went, oh, well, that's not going to work. So I'm just going to do these last 2 beads so that my pattern continues. So 1 around the bead and 2 blanks. And then my last bead, I'm going to do 1 around the bead, and then I'm just going to check and see what I've got at the beginning here. So in the beginning, I've got maybe 1, what have I got there? No, I've got 2 after. So I don't really want to have too many in between, because I like so that you don't see where it joins. So I'm going to do 1 around the bead, and then I'm going to just do 1, sorry, it keeps coming off here because I don't have much to hold on to. So I just did 1 around the bead, and then I'm going to do 1, and that's it. So now what you do to end that is you just kind of open that up. You're going to take that end and come through there. Just go through the little loop that you've got there, and you're going to pull, and that will just naturally kind of tighten it up, and you can't even see that at all. So then what I do is I've got my 2 ends here. So the end I started with and the end that I'm going to finish with. And then I just tie some knots. So I don't really ever notice it when it's on me, but I do get them so that they're fairly close. Just kind of pull that together so you can't really see it. But I tie just like you're tying your shoes. So I'll just show you what I did here again. But you can tie a surgeon's knot too. So you can go around once, twice, and kind of pull that through. You just want it to be nice and neat. So I'm putting a bit of tension on there so that it gets nice and tight in there. And just make sure it's close. It's always hard when I'm under the camera trying to figure out how I did this. Let me just try it again. I'm just going to go once, just like I'm tying my shoes there, because that didn't want to work the other way. And now I'm going to do a surgeon's knot. So what I'm going to do is bring that through like I'm tying my shoes, but I'm going to bring it through 1 more time. And then make sure there's no gap there. It looks pretty good. Get it in the middle and make sure it's nice and tight. And you just pull really, really tight. So now you can't really see anything. And once you wear this a little bit, it will kind of loosen up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be using a thread zapper, but if you don't have a thread zapper, I would glue that really well and then trim it off after. I wouldn't do it in the manner that I'm doing it right now. I would glue it like crazy with some GS Hypo so that's not going to go anywhere. But I'm going to be using a thread zapper. Now you can only use this on non-natural fibers. So you can use it on polyesters and things like that. Like it won't work on cotton, that sort of stuff. So you just make sure that when you've got one of these that you're using fresh batteries. If you've got really old batteries, often they don't work. So you just hold the end until it starts smoking or getting pretty hot. Sometimes you don't see anything smoking. Mine's just getting really hot. Now I probably should have those a little bit shorter, but I want to be able to show you. So you just kind of like push down and you know, kind of do that. And that's probably a little bit much. So let me just trim a little bit off there. And then you just kind of want to make sure that you're only hitting that end there, because if you hit the middle of this, it will sear right through it. So you can just take your fingers and kind of push down. And then you could take a pair of pliers, just got a pair of pliers here, and you can kind of like squish that down a little bit if you want, and it'll kind of burnish the end so you don't see it. But over time, like I don't even notice that. I'm going to take my other pliers and I'm just going to push that down there. I've been wearing the one that I wear often on my videos for, gosh, maybe more than 10 years. And I put that thing through a lot of punishment, and you can, you know, it holds up. So I can kind of see that a little bit, but I never notice it when it's on. So now in its full length, now this one is short by about 30 beads. So in its full length, you can wear this in many different ways. So I wore it to a wedding 2 weeks ago, and what I did was I just doubled it, and I just hung it over my neck and just used it as an accent, as a necklace. The other way that I have worn it over my neck, and I would show you, but it's really hard on camera. So I will put it on like one long piece like this, and then I will wrap it around my neck again and create like a bit of a choker. So I've got like a choker around my neck and then one long piece hanging down. So that's how I wear it as a necklace. I gave one to my mom, and she has worn it where she takes it and brings it around her neck and brings one end through the other and pulls it up so that it's like a choker kind of thing, like a lariat sort of thing, but more like a choker because that goes around her neck. So there's, you know, lots of different ways that you can wear it as a necklace. My favorite way is to just wrap it around my wrist. So all I do is I just wrap it around like that. And then when I get to this part where it's a little bit, you know, hard to get around, I just sort of do this. And there we go. Now, if you want, because what I do, I like it a little bit tighter on me. I don't like it this loose. I will take it, let me get this off now. And this is where it will stretch a little tiny bit over time because I kind of make it really, really snug. And then I get one more loop. I'm not too sure if I'm going to be able to because I didn't make this one the right size, the right length. But I take this and I go pretty tight. And it looks really tight for now. But then, so I might, yeah, I can get it one more. So it doesn't look like you can, but you kind of just take it and squish it on, and then you go backwards and just keep kind of moving your, it looks awkward. I'm hoping I'm under a camera. It's going to look tight until I kind of get my, there we go. So that loosens it up, but it made a little bit snugger around my wrist, and then I got one more loop. So now when you have the actual length of about 161, 165 beads, something like that, you'll get another couple loops. And so it's quite wide looking. And I just think it's so cute and it's timeless. I've been wearing mine, like I said, for about 10 years, and I get compliments every time I wear it. So I really hope that you enjoyed this one. It's one of the most simple techniques. It's a good stash buster if you've got some 6/0 seed beads. You could use anything like that, anything that you can get your, like I didn't really use a needle, but you could use a big eye needle to make it easier to get the beads on. But really all you want to make sure is that you can get that S-long cording through your beads and you're set to go. And so that's it. So I hope you liked this video. If you did, please make sure to give me a thumbs up and leave me a comment and tell me what you're going to do with it. Make sure that if you do put this away, like in a jewelry box or something like that, one of the things that I can recommend is to wrap it around like an old paper towel holder or something like that, or toilet paper holder, just like the roll, because this can tangle really easily if you just throw it in the bottom of your jewelry box. And especially if you're going to travel, wrap it around something so that it does not tangle. So there's my little tip for the day. Make sure if you haven't subscribed to my channel that you do. I'm trying to put out as many videos as I can lately, and I'm darn close to my 100,000 subscribers. So please make sure that you join the crew if you like my content. And that's about it. So thank you so much for watching, and we will see you on the next one.